Hey guys, what's up? It's Alexander Williamson here with this secret history living inside your aquarium. Today we're going to talk about unlikely fishy friends that can be kept in the same tank. Now, I must say, as a forewarning, that not all of these situations you're going to see work out for everyone or the stories I'm going to tell. But, it all depends on your fish, your tank, your level of knowledge, and the way you set up and feed your tank. So, let's talk about some of the ways you can kind of prevent skirmishes between creatures in your tank. So, I'm going to dispel a big myth, which is that you can't keep puffer fish with other fish. Well, I have 6 pea puffers. Granted, they're little guys. And yes, they are territorial. They can be nippy. That being said, if they are fed enough and fed properly, they will not be a problem. You can also see I have crebensis here. These crebensis are very large compared to most of the other fish in the tank. The male here is probably 5 inches long. He is one of the larger crebensis I have seen. And the female is probably 3.5 inches long. These are crebensis pulchers. And those are a little different than the other crebensis that you'll see sometimes, the tinniatus and things like that. But here you can see a crebensis and a pufferfish, and they're all hanging out. And they're all eating their food, and nobody's killing each other. The most common skirmishes that I see in this tank, in fact, and I just put bloodworms in, which is everybody's favorite, is between the same species. So, a way that I want to recommend that you keep down the violence, the intensity of what's going on in your tank is by getting enough of one species that it spreads out the altercations amongst themselves. I don't know if that makes sense right off the bat, but if you have, see there, he just went for a worm and he struck it as if he was attacking, in the wild or something. These puffer fish, they're going to scoot around and they'll steal from each other. But they usually won't steal from many fish much bigger. As this guy knows, though, he's one of the kings of the tank, and he can do pretty much whatever he pleases. But your pufferfish are gonna know that. They're gonna realize that the Siamese algae eater over here and these cribs are really the big bad boys. So, believe it or not, the fight is not usually between your largest fish and your smallest fish, although in some cases like cichlids and oscars, that's to say non-dwarf cichlids, these are dwarf cichlids from Central Africa or West Africa, but basically you'll see skirmishes more between the same species. So my danios, they attack each other frequently during mealtime. My tetras here, the red-eyed orange tetras, they will attack one another during mealtime. And they will fight sometimes with the pufferfish, only during mealtime. But the real thing to do is to understand what fish you have in your tanks, what their behaviors are, what they're capable of, because some fish, they're pretty chill most of the time, but they are capable of just messing up other fish. And pea puffers, for their size, I would say are one of the golden glove winners for being able to mess things up their size. Yet in this tank, they do not bug the little guppies that have lures for tails. And the guppies seem to know there's a pecking order that was established relatively swiftly upon getting these fish. So basically, you see here that there are bloodworms, and there's also some normal flake food in the tank. And this is about as violent as things usually get. So You'll also see that between the guppies, they will sometimes fight and nip at each other's fins, the males, especially these long-finned ones. And so really what you want to look at too is if you have fish that are way out of size and the fish that are in the tank with them, so if I had an Oscar in this tank, or if I had a larger puffer, a Maboo, which there's no way I should keep in this tank, or let's say Amazonian puffers, that would be very ill-advised because they would view the littler fish easily as a snack, even if they're just angry, even if they're not that hungry. But as you can see over here, the puffers, they hang out together and they form a little group, as do all the endlers up here. They form a group, and you can kind of see that in the tank. The ember tetras, they form a group, and the lemon tetras, they form a group. So if you give the tank areas that are sectioned off and have broken lines of sight, this really allows your fish to claim an area and kind of not have it be intruded upon. So the puffers, when they started in this tank, their area was down here, and in the thick of all this stuff, and they still go down there once in a while. But now their main area is down under these rocks in this kind of cave. And they definitely hang out in here, and they come out from the Matterhorn mountain in here. And sorry about all the floating debris and bubbles coming out. The water's a little low, so the bubbles make the water look all spotty and dirty. But it's just water changed. But, so these puffers come out, and once they're out of their little territory, they're just fine. You see how fat this one is? Which brings me to my next comment, which is keep your fish well fed. Know that certain fish eat different things. So this little fatty puffer clearly is eating all the bloodworms, and he'll eat anything like any sinking food, Daphnia, stuff like that. No problem, he'll eat. As for who he'll bug, you'll notice that there are, even down here where you see cribs and a barb, more of these cribs, they don't bug these little fry that are down here from the endlers. They don't have a problem with them, and they're not on the menu. So as long as you keep them eating something they like more than other fish, and as long as there's places for them to hide and to scoot away from the other fish in the tank, you're pretty much golden with most fish. Now, not all combinations work. Like I said, if you throw an Oscar in, that's going to be a bad time. The Oscar will eat everyone. You need to know if your fish hunts down and eats other fish as its primary diet. I don't keep any fish right now that is their MO. That's their normal diet, like a tarpon or a peacock bass, something like that. It's going to eat other fish in your tank. And yes, you may be able to keep something like little endlers that scoot around and one or two might get eaten, and it might be okay if there's a big size difference. But especially a young predator, you're going to see that they very quickly devour a lot of your tank. So I would recommend learning about your fish. Make sure you don't have any fish that hunt other fish as their primary food. You want micro predators, or predators that eat worms and eat bugs and fish eggs, things like that. Frogs, little frogs, algae, obviously, and vegetation. And when you do that, you're going to be pretty well off most of the time with the hobby species. The last thing I would really, really highlight doing is, if you're going to try to keep something weird together with something else, and I say weird as in just like most people would not recommend it. So as I talked about setting them up with zones, learn what they like. So I know that my my plecos, they like the rocks. I know that my Amano shrimp, they like the beer or the algae that's growing here, and so I leave a little bit of algae on the moss there. It's not a perfect looking tank, but it keeps them happy in their little zones. The other thing, good water flow helps, and knowing that some fish will hang out at the top, others will hang out below. My most nippy fish in this tank is probably the danios, and we got rid of the leopard danio because it was so nippy that it was constantly chasing everyone. And since I moved that fish out of here, now we have some flame danios that they chase each other. See these two? And it's more of like a mating, that one's a female, one's a male, more of a mating thing. But when you have nippy fish like that, either get them in a small enough group that they feel like they can't establish a dominant alpha role, and then have some other fish in that size category or speed category. So I'm considering the Siamese algae eater and the cribs as competition for these danios, so that they don't think that they're the top of the top, because there's only 3 of them. But if I put 8 in there, they totally ignore the other fish, and they just work on their own hierarchy. So sometimes, ironically, more is more with violent fish, because they will worry about each other and defending and protecting territory of each other. Now, fish like these, when we've got the poulture cribs, they're going to have a very strong territory. Any of your cichlids, your cribs, your epistogramma, they're going to have really, really specific areas that they will defend to the death. And same with some gobies or gudgeons, things like that. They'll do that, but on a smaller, like very specific scale. So these cribs, they actually are, right now, they're lit up for spawning. So this is as aggressive as they get, is what you're seeing right here. And she could come up and nip at those puffers or any of the other fish in here. But she's well fed. She's got a belly full of eggs and a belly full of food. And more importantly, she has that entire corner plus a cave underneath that stuff where her and her hubby hang out. And that really eliminates fights, because their line of sight, when they're down in their corner, they can't see all that's going on. They don't feel like they're under attack all the time. Same with the puffers. The puffers can go back in here in this like matrix of rock, and they don't feel like they're under attack all the time. It's their choice when they want to come out. And then the fish that like open water, they just do what fish do, and that's where I say that like danios, zebra danios, leopard danios, some of the bigger tetras, that's where you can get the fin nippers that you wouldn't expect to do damage, but they're the ones who will rip at your guppies' tails and things like that oftentimes as well. So, I hope I covered a little bit here. Let's recap real quick, which is more is more sometimes with violent or nippy fish. I'm going to go ahead and say you should stay away unless you really know what you're doing or you want to try it out and you're going to, yank them right away. You're going to sit there and watch. But keep the real violent fish that hunt other live fish as their primary food. And I'm not talking about fish that eat fry. I'm sorry, but all these fish are capable of eating fry of their own and other fish. So this isn't a good tank for breeding, except for the cribs. The cribs have bred in here. Sometimes the tetras will breed, but usually the fry will get gobbled up. And eggs get eaten in short order. So know what your goal is in your tank, and if it's not breeding or anything like that, establish zones. And even if you're not trying to breed the larger fish, the crebensis or a cichlid of some sort, give them a corner or half or a third of the tank that's kind of theirs, that has some hiding options and lots of plants. Plants help so much with anger and chasing, because these fish, they kind of just give up when they see something. They may chase it around for a little while, but if it's really done with it, if it does not want to be chased, it will dip down in deep into the weeds and the reeds. And I keep it tangled. It doesn't always look beautiful, but that allows these fish to make a beeline for the ground if there are other options of hiding under the water lettuce. So, as I said, you're establishing more zones with things that break up lines of sight between them and other fish. So, in this tank, as a fish, you're going to see that it's pretty hard to see across the tank. It's pretty hard to see even a third of a way across the tank. And that keeps the violence and the biting down a ton. So then the other thing you're going to do is keep them well fed, make sure they don't have parasites and things like that that have them constantly wanting food. And lastly, just, do things carefully, one step at a time, because in this tank, the pea puffers wouldn't have worked without the cribs and without the Siamese algae eater. The Siamese algae eater, I personally know, is not going to go out and eat all of the babies of my guppies or something. He's going to worry about algae, and he may swipe food, which annoys the other fish, but he's not going to eat other fish out of the water. And so he's still 5 inches long, and that's imposing. So it's a balance. And I have to say again, what works for me will not work for everybody. I've kept fish off and on for over 20 years. And for me, I know certain combinations that seem to work pretty well. And so that's why you can see in the background here, we just had Crebensis pulchers, and there is a Crebensis Tinniatus Bipindi in here, and female. And a lot of people don't like mixing species because of hybrids and things like that. They think it's wrong. But I'm not selling these fish or anything. I just had an extra one and I put it in here, and they both seem to live happily in a trio. So I'm having them mate and do their mating thing, full colors, which is really beautiful in a community tank. Plus, all the other fish are getting along just fine. The guppies are going to mate no matter what. The endlers, guppies, and the bumblebee platies, they'll all mate no matter what. And then the schooling fish, like these ember tetras, they're going to hold their own no matter what. They're going to be okay as long as they have enough of each other to feel safe. So if you have 3 of something, that's not a good idea. You want to have a big collection of whatever it is, if it's a social fish. And that is the last tip for keeping oddball fish with one another. And right here, you're getting treated at the end of the video to watching competitive sparring between different crib species trying to mate and impress that male pulcher, which means beautiful in Latin, crib. So what a great ending. No harm, no foul between those fish, and the other fish stay out of the way. And this is just one example of a tank that has 4 or 5 combinations that I have had end in disaster with dead fish when they're just a combo of, if you put pea puffers and guppies together, probably going to end badly. But if you have enough space, enough broken sight lines, and enough of just different fish to confuse, throw off, make them reassess who the alpha fish is, you can really switch things up and keep things together that you wouldn't expect. This tank will not hold shrimp so well, but there are a couple of monos that have stuck through even the toughest onslaught by everyone. So anything is possible, but be careful when you try it out. Ease into it slowly and really brush up on what it means to put those fish together, what they need food-wise, what they need shelter-wise, and so on. So, alright guys, take it easy. Keep your fish tanks clean. Take care of the people around you. Take care of your critters. And it'll all come back to you in due time. So, take it easy. I'll talk to you next time. Please write, subscribe, like, and I'm happy to talk to you in the comments or on the Facebook page of the same name. Alright guys, take it easy. Bye-bye.